New Orleans wins this game 35-14. So first 2 weeks of the season, Saints looked like one of the best teams in the NFL. And then what was it? 6-7 weeks? One of the worst teams in the NFL.
Mojo wears off a little.
And now, last 2 weeks, could be back, baby. You got McCoy back. Trevor Penning's playing well. The offensive line's playing well again. You don't have Chris Olave. You don't have Rashid Shaheed. Feels like no problem over here. This team's playing well despite all the injuries over the last couple of weeks.
NFC South is still kind of open.
Oh, it is. It absolutely is.
It always is.
Yeah, no, it always comes down to the wire. This division does. Let's take a look at the top 5 graded players. Linebacker Demario Davis, a 91.2 overall grade. Tight end Foster Moreau with an 85.9. Tight end Juwan Johnson with an 84.8. And then tight end Taysom Hill with an 80.5. No wide receivers. Like I said, Shaheed's down. Chris Olave's not in the lineup. No problem. Just feed the tight end. Tight end passing game, baby. So Derek Carr's all about.
Too.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, I guess I didn't even – that's disrespectful. You know what? My premise of this was – my setup to this was disrespectful to MVS in the last 2 weeks that he has had. Safety Jordan Howden at number 5 on this list with an 80.1. Derek Carr in this game an 84.7. On Cleveland side of things, Denzel Ward had an elite 92.0 grade in this one. Edge rusher Myles Garrett with an 82.5. Edge rusher Isaiah McGuire with a 79.5. Defensive tackle Shelby Harris a 73.9. Wide receiver Jerry Jeudy a 72.1. Jameis Winston in this game, a 68.3. Stat that told the story, Dalton. What do we got?
Well, in part because of Taysom Hill, like you mentioned, who is he's a tight end on paper, but he's just kind of football player. But Saints explosive plays been a theme for us all year. They want to run the ball. They want to throw deep balls. Okay, I think that the explosive runs is really a big X factor, and them not finding. He's been doing it for years. You believe Taysom Hill's 34 years old, by the way? Running the ball like that?
I only believe that because people remind me of it all the time. I would not have had people not.
Well, you should have warned me before. You should have warned me before the show not to remind you.
Sorry,
I didn't know you had already been reminded by the entire public.
I was too busy complimenting your hat.
Well, I know you have a big audience, so you know. You got to remind me of these things.
They're all bots.
Anyway, true. Saints 4 wins. 18 explosive runs in those games. 7 losses, 16 explosive runs total. They want to run the ball because it's Clint Kubiak, and it comes from Mike Shanahan and the whole tree all the way down. And they want to throw the ball down the field, which now that they found Marquez Valdez-Scantling, they can do that too. They have someone to take the top off because Rashid Shaheed's done for the year and all that stuff. There's a clear formula here with the Saints, and this is what it looks like now. The added dimension of Taysom Hill, which they should have known about this. I think there's I forget what the record is, but there's some crazy stat since Taysom Hill's been on the Saints about when he gets like 10 touches or something, that their record is like disgustingly good. I couldn't find the number in time for the show. I don't know maybe a Saints fan in the chat can find that too, because when Taysom Hill gets at least 10 touches, they're like almost undefeated over the last like 4 or 5 years. He's actually not just a gimmick thing. He's a really big factor for their offense when they use him right. Love when they use them down on the goal line. I think it's a great thing to put in. And they just, it's the one time they really get away from the zone running game is when they put him in the cat and they have all those tight ends and they run power and they just say, go ahead. And like you said, also, is there any player in football who's more fun than Taysom Hill? Honestly.
When he goes off,
I know we have fun ones. We have Mahomes and Allen in the big games.
I think it's very frustrating for teams that are playing on the other side of it when he goes off.
Well, it's so much to prepare for.
Yeah,
he plays every position.
He gets a bad rap because of the year that Sean Payton was like, all right, screw you. I'll put him at quarterback. I'll do it.
He wasn't that bad.
Well, he wasn't good at passing.
Sure.
Come on, let's be honest.
No, but you running off then at that point as a backup.
He was what Vanderbilt's doing with Diego Pavia.
Honestly, I might have earlier this year. If it was me and knowing I had that guy, I probably would have played him over Rattler. And I know they just drafted Rattler and they want to believe.
Yeah, we're never going to do that. But I hear what you're saying.
They weren't gonna, but that's where I would go. I would have gone with that. Just run the football like crazy with him then. But either way, just a great player that I think sometimes gets passed off as a gimmick, and there's so few players that can do what he does, on top of playing special teams and returning kick. They have a 34-year-old kick returner who used to play quarterback and does all the other things he does on offense. I mean, he's just a great football player.
7 carries, 138 yards, 3 rushing touchdowns, 10 targets, 8 catches, 50 receiving yards.
And an interception. To your point about the passing, he did throw an interception in this game. Which is tough, but you know what? He fights through it. He keeps doing the million jobs.
The Saints' offense is so balanced yesterday. Yeah. Well, the offensive line, so you get McCoy back in the lineup. Trevor Penning is playing better. Like I mentioned, the offensive line just in general is playing better for the Saints. They're back healthy, because I think that it's worth noting they were healthy in weeks 1 and weeks 2 when we called them one of the better teams in the NFL. Then they've gone through a lot of injuries along the offensive line. Fuanga's been out. McCoy has been out. Now those guys are back in there, so it's looking better, obviously. I think that that's certainly something that is of note. But 259 passing yards in this game, 214 yards rushing. Normally, balance doesn't weigh out like that. Normally, balance in the NFL, a healthy yet explosive offense is probably something a little bit closer to like 250, 275 yards passing, and then, I don't know.
$130.
I was going to say like anywhere from 125 to 175 rushing. And that's balanced. I think people when people think of balance, they think it has to be 50-50. That's not really how it's supposed to work. Passing the ball is more advantageous, explosive, and you score more points when you pass the football. And it doesn't mean running's not important and also a pivotal part to the game, but like balance, average completion is just it's always going to be double what an average carry is going to be. So you obviously want your passing yards to be a lot higher. If your passing yards and your rushing yards are even, like if it's 200 and 200, sure, you're running the ball really great, but when you play some of the better passing offenses in the NFL, are you going to be able to keep up? I think that's an issue that you have. So anyways, all of that to say, the Saints offense is pretty dang balanced, especially the way that they played yesterday. And Taysom Hill is a massive reason why he was able to get going, and it was a lot of fun to watch him. He has like an elite game every single year. 1 or 2, at least 1, just sometimes 2.
The Taysom Hill game.
It is every single year we get the Taysom Hill game, and this was the Taysom Hill game. And anytime you line up against the New Orleans Saints, you just pray that you're not that team, because it's so hard to beat this team. You're right. I don't know what the record is when Taysom Hill like goes off like this, but it's got to be a good record.
There is some record when he has at least 10 touches. I'll have to dig through and find it later. But when he gets at least 10 touches, they win like almost every game. They just find ways to get him involved, and it's all sorts of nonsense from there.
Most disappointing or most impressive? Go ahead.
Impressive. I'll go on the other side. A guy I've been kind of worried about a little bit lately, but he had a great game. Demario Davis at linebacker, 13 tackles, couple of pass breakups, 91.2 overall grade. I thought one of the bigger plays in this game was right before the half. He had a pass breakup on Jameis in the end zone that then led to the Browns attempting a field goal, and Dustin Hopkins missed from 27 or 29, wherever they kicked it from, real short. Again, weird day for kickers, but turned into a play that saved them 7 and then eventually missing a field goal. I mean, that was a big play before the half. And then just most disappointing, I guess, is just this game was actually tied going into the fourth quarter, and the Saints just teed off on the Browns in the next 15 minutes, especially on the ground. 138 rushing yards in the fourth quarter alone. And the Browns had a 29 run defense grade in that quarter. It just, whatever happened there with their defense just kind of came apart, because they played pretty darn well for 3 quarters, and then it all fell apart on them.
Yeah, Browns defense to me, and just on the season overall, really, the Browns defense, I think if we could just kind of take a step back there, 24.8 points per game allowed. That's 24th in the NFL, 48.4 coverage grade this season. They're 21st in EPA per play allowed. That was supposed to be the bread and butter of this team, right? I felt like the identity was, all right, they're going to play really good defense. They got a good offensive line, and then we'll kind of see what we have with Deshaun Watson. Well, the offensive line's not been good this year, and the defense has not been up to their caliber over the last 2 to 3 seasons, and that was just always going to be a recipe for disaster this season for the Cleveland Browns. Thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure you like and subscribe the video, and if you don't have a PFF Plus subscription, you can get one to see all the premium stats that we talked about here on the show, plus the expert betting and fantasy advice over at subscribe.pff.com. The description is also right below, so if you are not a PFF Plus subscriber, you can come one today.